want to thank our sponsor, Aviator, who have created a collection of limited edition watches to celebrate the 80th anniversary of VE Day in the form of the P51 Mustang Patriot Automatic, the Spitfire Type 300 Automatic, and the Hawker Hunter Kent Automatic, each coming in 2 different colourways. The detail on the watch is incredible, as it shows Winston Churchill's universally recognised V sign for victory on both the face and the caseback, plus engraved on the caseback is Churchill's stirring words from his speech on VE Day, and as an added bonus on the leather band it shows the musical notes of Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 that are subtly engraved, which is often called the Victory Symphony. I personally own the Valor Midnight, as I love the large V sign on the dial that acts as a second hand, and the lume really shows off the detail in this watch. Either way, you won't be disappointed with any of the models you decide to go for, which you can pick up now via their website at avi-8.com. Thank you and enjoy. So I want to talk, Rick, about DACT in the Lightning. Did you ever go up against like the Americans, or like you mentioned the French there, and what did they fly and how did the Lightning fare?
Yeah, we used to go up against the Americans, F-15s. I mean, they had F-15s down at Bitburg. You know, when I was in Germany, then I did much more combat, incidentally, back in the UK on my second tour than I did on my first tour. Right. But the 104 was the mainstay of most air forces in Germany, the German Air Force, and they had a lot of 104s. Yeah. So we used to mix with the 104s a lot. As in any combat, quite frankly, you sort of you know the strengths and weaknesses of your opposition because you study it. And you know the strengths and weaknesses of your own aircraft. So whatever the actual sort of principles of combat haven't changed from World War II. What has changed is you using your aircraft to its best ability, and you're using, when I say best ability, that's the physical side of the aircraft, its engines and performance and things like that. And the technical side, i.e. the weapon capability. What weapons have you got? What's their capability? And where are they best? I mean, like these days, I mean, it's so advanced these days that you can close combat.
It's your BBR now, isn't it?
You can, if you get into close combat,
you've done something wrong.
You've got it. Close combat, believe me, is great fun. It's always good fun having a good fight. Yeah. And I talk as combat as being the sport of kings, because to me it was. Nothing I used to enjoy more than having a 1v1 or a 2v2, because it's like a boxing ring, quite frankly. You're performing against opposition, and I've always been a competitive man. I like winning.
That's brilliant. So, obviously, everyone knows the Lightning's a bit short on fuel. Was always an eye on the fuel gauge?
Oh yes. When I first got to 92 Squadron, we had the Mark II Lightning, which was very similar to the Mark 1A I've been flying at Coldershall, and it was a short-range Lightning, which basically is recognisable because it had a little ventral tank, the fuel tank underneath, a ventral tank underneath. And the average sortie length on that would be subsonic. We'd probably do between 40 and 50 minutes subsonic. If we were supersonic, if we were doing a supersonic sortie, it was 20 to 25 minutes. And if you think about an aircraft sort of getting airborne, climbing 0.9, then accelerating to probably up to 1.6 or something like that, you're covering a lot of sky. The fuel is just pouring out of the back, and you've got to manage your position, because you ain't going to be up there very long, and you've got to get back on the ground. So the whole exercise is a management exercise. And I'll say one thing about the Lightning and the fuel management. It taught me a lot about airmanship, because there's not a Lightning pilot who won't talk about the fuel. I mean, and the fuel gauge would very often become almost like the primary instrument, in fact, towards the end of the sortie. Yeah. But those are the early ones. So we were very constrained probably when we had the Mark II. But very early on in my tour, we we switched to the Mark IIA. They were the Mark IIA the aircraft were going back to British Airspace to be upgraded to 2A standard, which looked very similar to the Mark VI. It had the big ventral tank underneath, and and it had a number of other changes to it, but it gave a very significant increase in range and endurance and what have you. So the average length of a sortie then, subsonic as I recall, it was probably about an hour and a quarter, hour 20.
Okay.
Or you could get longer. You get longer than that. And supersonic sorties were now sort of 45, 50 minutes.
Right.
So it made a tremendous difference. The other difference it'd make with the Mark II, you didn't need reheat to take off. We used to take off in cold power.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
You
you
obviously-
need
you-
reheat in the Lightning.
No, you didn't. No, not in the T4 never didn't need reheat. The Mark I and the Mark II and the Mark III didn't need reheat because they were all short-range Lightnings. The Mark VI and the Mark IIA, you needed the burners to take off to take off with. That was a big difference. I mean, we used to do sort of, as you're well aware, we used to do reheat takeoffs. It was a great thrill doing a reheat takeoff, and particularly a reheat rotation takeoff. And I remember my very first Friday arriving on 92. On Fridays, the squadron always flew a 9 ship.
Did
And
it really?
my first Friday there, I was flying in the squadron 9 ship, and we did 3-second stream rotation takeoffs.
What a sight that would have been.
A lightning rotation takeoff, I mean, fantastic. But I mean, the lightning, really, particularly the short range lightning, God, they really accelerated like a dingbat. And you plug in the burners and you just rocketed down the runway. You had to have your finger on the undercarriage button. So as soon as the wheels were off the ground, you had to press the undercarriage button.
Wow.
Because if you didn't get the wheels up by 250 knots, the nose wheel would stay down.
Would it really?
Yeah, the nose wheel had to be up by 250 knots. Because if it came down, you then had to slow down, get 250 knots, and get the nose wheel up. So and of course that was the end of your rotation takeoff. So, and that actually there were, over my time on the Lightning, there were a number of cases, funny enough, where the pilots put the aircraft back on the ground because they got the wheels up too quickly, and then slip back. Well, that's another thing. You had to get the wheels up pretty quickly, and then we'd hit sort of 240 knots or so, and a stick back in your stomach, and the aircraft would just stand on its backside, and up you went.
Yeah, like it just literally looks like a rocket going up, doesn't it? I've seen a good
It
video
it was very impressive. I mean, the Lightning was a hugely fun aircraft to fly, and it was a hugely impressive aircraft to watch, and it was iconic there. I look at it, I'm very pleased to see sort of how iconic the Lightning has become. To me, the Lightning is iconic in the military side as Concorde is on the commercial side. You know,
Yes, I agree.
they're two very special aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, the other thing about the Lightning, I mean, I remember sort of being up 2 o'clock one morning over Germany, and it was a brilliant night, clear as hell, nice big moon. I could see the lights of Berlin there. I could see the lights of London there. I was so high.
I'm leaving that in.
That's my granddaughter's fart machine.
Oh, God.
And what was I talking about? Yeah, there I was at 40,000 plus feet. I could see the lights of London, lights of Berlin, and I remember just thinking to myself, here I am all by myself in this £1 million plus aircraft, because what it was in those days was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I thought, to think I'm trusted to be here, it just felt.
Did that actually cross your mind when you're thinking what am I doing here? Or were you like,
Oh no, I don't. What did cross my mind was to think that I'm trusted to be here.
Yes, yeah.
So I'd earned, and I had.
course, yeah.
I'd earned the privilege, and you couldn't just put anybody on Lightnings. I mean, if I say it myself, only the best going through training sort of really went to the Lightning, because it was that sort of aircraft. Because you had to put people up there, people on the Lightning, who you thought were going to cope. Because as I said at the start, if you didn't keep up with the Lightning, you were in problems right from the start.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions from some viewers, and they said, what was it like transitioning from the Lightning to the Phantom?
Interesting.
Obviously single seat and then 2 seats.
Interesting. I mean, I spent the first 10 years of my flying career in the RAF really flying single seat aircraft. I say single seat. I did spend a tour at Valley in between the Lightning and the Phantom, instructing on the Nat and the Hunter. So, but even then, there's a lot of single seat flying going on there too. Then I went to the Phantom, which was a real war machine, and I love the Phantom as well. But several things took a bit of getting used to. The first thing was, I obviously sort of had a navigator in the back seat. I call them fighter gators, in fact, because that's what they are as far as I'm concerned, and a bloody fine bunch as well. But it does, up to that point in the air defence world, I'd been used to doing it all myself. Now I was working as part of a team, and you have to work at working as part of a team. But there's no doubt about it in my mind that a team working well is an incredibly effective sort of unit, and it was. But it does, like, I think you speak to all Lightning pilots and they'll sort of say, you don't just climb in and it's the same. It's not the same. It's you're different. The Phantom was a much more capable aircraft than the Lightning from the weapons side as well, and had a radar that could see miles compared with the Lightning. The other thing, being on a squadron, I was on Treble 1 squadron, my first Phantom tour, and I think we had 15 or 16 aircraft. We were a big squadron, and there were about 44 plus aircrew. I was used to being on part of a band of brothers, 15 pilots with 12 aircraft. Now I was on this huge squadron. It felt different as well.
Yeah, right, yeah. Was the social side different as well?
Wherever I was, the social side was good. Because we made it good, quite frankly.
Of course, yeah.
It was good, no. But it was different. I loved my time on the Lightning, but I particularly loved being part of that small unit, that band of brothers. I can't stress that enough. I loved being on the Phantom as well, but it was a different environment.
Yeah, and someone else asked me, like, if you could have, you got the 3 aircraft lined up, which one would you take for one last ride?
I'll take the Lightning. I'll be quite honest. I mean, I loved all of them. The Lightning was my choice of aircraft to fly at the start, and it will always have a special place in my heart. The Phantom was a war machine and had some interesting flying characteristics, the Phantom. For example, it was the first time I'd flown with an angle of attack gauge.
Yes.
But when we loaded up the Phantom pull G, which we see on the angle of attack units, but above a certain point, above 16 units, as I recall, you didn't use the ailerons. If you had the aircraft loaded up, you turned on the rudders.
Yeah.
Because if you tried to use the ailerons, because of the design of the wings, the camber of the wings and what have you, the aircraft would go the other way.
Right.
So,
Got it. Yeah, I've heard that from a few Phantom pilots actually. Yeah.
so it had some interesting characteristics, the Phantom, which you had to think about when you were flying. The Lightning I just found the Lightning, it was just a pure joy to fly. They were all joys to fly. The Tornado, I love flying the Tornado. The Tornado was probably the easiest of the lot to fly. It had by far the quietest cockpit. And obviously, as I went Lightning, Phantom, Tornado, each time there was a quantum leap in capability. And the Tornado was very much a sort of computer-driven aircraft. And we could track 10 targets at a time with the radar and things like that. So if you ask me which one I'd like to fly, I've got to say the Lightning. But if you ask me sort of which aircraft would I have preferred to go to war with, then I would say, and I've heard Ian Black say this as well, it's the Tornado. Because amongst other things, the Tornado, for example, not all of them, but some of them had data link. Data link made a big difference, but data link and the weapon system capabilities and the missile AMRAAM and ASRAAM and things like that, you just had a lot going for you.
So before we get on to what you are currently up to, can you kind of sum up what the Lightning meant to you?
It meant a big smile on my face for a start. The Lightning meant it was my dream aircraft. I just look back at my time on the Lightning, and it formed me, quite frankly, because it set me off on my life as a pilot and my life in the RAF as a fighter pilot, and the people I met, and I just recall it, and it just paved the way for any successes that came thereafter. I was flying an aircraft that I absolutely loved. I was working with people who were great people, whom I respected and still respect to this day. The camaraderie was just second to none. Yeah. We did some amazing flying. We went to some great places. It was just memorable.
And I think, don't you sometimes have like a catch up on like Skype or Zoom with some of your old Lightning buddies?
I do, yeah.
That must be fun.
We have a 92 squadron. My time on Lightnings, in fact, sort of, we have a 92 squadron reunion every now and again, sort of on Zoom. Of course, we have the annual reunion as well, which we normally do in the RAF club. That's mainly sort of, there are two sides to the 92. There's the Lightning side, they're there, and there's the Phantom side, they're there. But but a lot of the Lightning pilots became Phantom pilots anyway, so the Lightning will always be special to me. And as they say, we're known as Weewols, and it's very true. It won't never be too long before a Lightning pilot starts talking about the Lightning, or when it says, when I was on Lightnings.
Yeah. that took 30 seconds, yeah.
And I've got so many memories. I did so many amazing things on the Lightning. It was we lost quite a few Lightnings as well, as you probably know. Sort of a number of, in those days, I remember that the drill for the fires used to change week by week, quite frankly, because in the late 1960s, early 1970s, we were losing a large number of Lightnings in fires. Although the Germany Lightnings were not as bad, and that's the engines in the Mark IIA were not as hot as the engines in the Mark IIIs and the Mark VIs. They were the ones who seemed to be losing more Lightnings. But the Lightning thing about the Lightning was it was two great big engines, but running down the side of the engines were the hydraulic lines and the fuel lines and the control runs. So if you had leaks or anything, fires, the potential for a fire was always there. And in the early days, the problem with the fire, if you had a fire, then there'd be a number of cases of the controls burning through. And of course, if the controls burn through, then the aircraft is, and a few Lightning pilots died because of that. So our fire drill, it evolved week by week, and eventually, we ended up, we had a fire. First thing we'd do, we'd go for height. We'd go for height, and I think it was up to about 10,000 feet, if possible. And 10,000 feet, and we'd set up the aircraft 250 knots. And basically this was because you were at a decent height. If it was a spurious warning, and we used to get spurious fire warnings as well, then the controls wouldn't burn through. And you might, if you've got your number 2 there and he can tell you you're on fire, you're on fire. Then you know what to do. It's eject. But if it's not there, then if you're not sure you've got this fire warning on, and the controls are still there after a while, then it's in all probability it's a spurious warning. and if it wasn't a spurious warning, the controls would probably burn through. And you've got plenty of time to eject, and if the seat doesn't go, because the seat in the Lightning won't go until the canopy goes.
Okay.
So if the seat didn't fire, then you'd have to bail out. You have to get rid of the canopy first of all, and that itself might trigger the seat to go. Or if not, you'd then have to get out manually. You could get out manually, but you were at a decent height to do that. If you were down and one or two Lightning pilots never had the chance because their controls burnt through, and they never had the chance to bail out manually when the seat didn't go. I think of a particular sort of accident that happened in South Africa down at Thunder City.
Yeah.
So fires were very real in the Lightning, and emergencies were very real. I mean, they used to happen. I mean, these days emergencies are so rare, but in those days, you'd have emergencies every single day.
So was this almost guaranteed? Yeah.
Oh, guaranteed. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ranged from people short of fuel to.
Yeah. So Rick, how many hours did you get on the Lightning?
About 1,500. Which is quite a lot of sorties.
That is a lot of sorties, a lot of half-hour trips.
I think my shortest sortie in the Lightning was actually in a 2A, and it was little more than about 12 minutes.
Why?
I was doing a 1v1 sortie, in fact, and I remember it very well. I was at Goodisloe and been up with one of my mates on the squadron. We'd done a really good 1v1 and landed, and we were back at the desk in the ops room signing in, and the boss walked through, and he said, "Haven't you guys gone yet?" And he said, "Yeah, we're back already." So then he thought, "You're back already? You must have exceeded the reheat limitations, because we were only allowed to, we were restricted on the amount of time you could have the reheats in."
Right. Yeah.
I don't think we had, but well, but I could tell you, I could talk all day about the Lightning. There were so many stories I could relate to.
Yeah,
it was just a thrill to be involved with such an iconic aircraft, and I mean, just thinking about it brings a smile to my face. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Rick, what are you currently up to? Any books in the works? Can you talk us through that?
I have. I'm writing my third book at the moment about my father. In fact, I've actually got two books coming. I'm working on my third book at the moment, which is about my father, called Teddy Peacock-Edwards, Battle of Britain pilot and World War II ace. So I'm quite enjoying that, because amongst other things I'm learning quite a lot about my father in doing it. Right. But it takes time, because it's quite a lot of research involved with that one. But when that one's done, and that all being well, that will be published by Grub Street in September this year, if I can get a move on. And then I've been asked to write a book about the Lightning.
Brilliant. You're going to enjoy that one as well.
I'm going to enjoy that one. That'll be much easier for me to write, because it'll just come out of my head, all my experiences. Whereas writing a book about my father, I'm relying on research and documents and things like that, because I wasn't there. He was there, and I'm reporting on what he did.
So with the Lightning book, is it like going to be stories from other Lightning pilots, or just your journey?
It's me. No, it's my experiences on the Lightning.
That's great.
Not like Nat Boys was, where it was a compilation of all sorts of stories. No, this will be it'll be a more detailed reconstruction of my 1,500 hours on the Lightning.
Great stuff. And where can we find your books online? Do you have a website, or is it Amazon? Where's the best?
It's on Amazon. They're on Amazon. Grub Street on their website, and it's a number of other places as well. But I know you've seen this before, but I've got my two books to date, one is my autobiography, Rate of Climb. Sold very well, that one.
It did, yeah.
And the other is Nat Boys. There's some great stories in there.
Yeah.
This, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't sold as well as Rate of Climb, and I think that's probably because people just don't know about the gnat. But this is a really great book. It really is. And there's another. There are still gnats flying today.
Yes.
And they're based at St Athan now, but they've got an Indian gnat. It's known as the ajit, in fact. And that hopefully is going to fly. Now I think when that flies, it'll be a draw at air displays and things like that, and that will be my key for big marketing on this book again.
I'll make sure to plug it. But Rick, thanks very much for coming back on the show.
Mike, it's always good to see you, and it's always good to. I enjoy it.
Brilliant stuff. Cheers.